Welcome back, capital F football fans, to the O&O Sports YouTube channel. Today, we are resuming our season previews, and today we're taking a look at the Miami Hurricanes. Can they take another big step under Cristobal and become ACC champions? Could they make the playoff this year? We are going to find out. But first, be sure to let me know what you think of the Miami Hurricanes this year, and as always, be sure to like and subscribe. It helps us out a lot. And now with that, let's jump into the schedule this year. Now, more often than not, ACC schedules are a bit easier than, say, the Big Ten or the SEC. But honestly, Miami's is still right up there this year. Taking a look, they'll face Notre Dame in Florida in their non-conference slate this year, both of those at home, and they actually start the season with 4 home games in a row. And I feel like if they go 4-0 in that stretch, they have a real chance of going undefeated on the season, but that is a huge if, mind you. Into their conference schedule, they face Florida State, SMU, Virginia Tech, and Pitt on the road, none of whom are going to be pushovers this year. And at home, they'll have Louisville, Stanford, Syracuse, and NC State. A very tough ACC schedule, especially with teams like Florida State, NC State, and Virginia Tech being teams I could see taking a big step up in conference this year. But they do get the rare luxury of playing 8 home games this year, something you don't see very often. And like I said, they start off the year 4 home games in a row, which makes this schedule a lot more manageable. And now let's take a look at Miami's strengths this year. And one of the biggest on this team is one that may come as a surprise to you. It's our dear friend Carson Beck. This may be a bit controversial, but I view Miami getting Beck in the portal to be just as, if not more valuable than getting Cam Ward last year, because we know Beck can be a Heisman caliber quarterback in the right system, and last year he just wasn't afforded the kind of opportunities through the air or on the ground that he was in 2023 when he looked so great. And with him making the jump to the ACC to a program like Miami, I think he will take a big leap back up to the top of the country, especially while playing behind our second strength of this video, the Hurricane offensive line. This unit returns the likes of Francis Manoa, who may be the best offensive lineman in the country period this year, Inez Cooper, and Markel Bell, who all got a heavy load of snaps last year. And they portal in Big 12 honorable mention center James Brockermeyer, formerly of Alabama and TCU. And they return Ryan Rodriguez, who missed last year with an injury, was slated to be the starter, but obviously didn't work out there. And overall, it's pretty easy for me to say that when healthy, this unit is right up there with some of the best units in the sport, especially in the ACC. They're right up there with Clemson in my opinion. And like I said earlier, Carson Beck is going to have a ton of time in the pocket, which is when Carson Beck is at his best. And for the last strength of this video, we're staying on this side of the ball and we're looking at the skill position talent. Now, I want to preface this by saying Miami does lose a ton of production on that side of the ball. Xavier Restrepo, Jacoby George, Isaiah Horton, Elijah Arroyo, and Sam Brown are all out from last season. And those 5 guys alone combined for over 3,500 receiving yards and 31 receiving touchdowns, which is a very hard pill to swallow. But the spoonful of sugar to help that go down is that they return and portal in one of the best wide receiver units in the ACC this year, with former high 4-star prospects in JoJo Trader and Ray Joseph returning, as well as portal additions in top 12 portal wide receiver CJ Daniels from LSU, as well as strong rotational talent in guys like Tony Johnson and Keelan Marion. Not to mention the insanely deep running back room Miami's going to field this year. They obviously lose their lead rusher, Damien Martinez, but they return key rotational guys in Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle, who combined for over 1,000 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns last year. And on top of that, they add FCS Freshman Player of the Year Charmar Brown, who by himself rushed for over 1,100 yards with 15 touchdowns for North Dakota State last year. And overall, this could be one of the most underrated running back rooms in all of college football this season. Those 3 guys all have a diverse set of skills, can all hurt you in multiple ways. And in my opinion, that added depth with Charmar Brown puts them over the edge as maybe one of the top units in the ACC, probably probably behind Louisville and Pitt. I don't think they have that number one guy in that room, but they do have three animals back there. And as for this team's weaknesses, the first and most important one for this team in 2025 is going to be the defensive staff. And I'm probably going to label this as more of a question mark because Mario Cristobal does bring in former Minnesota defensive coordinator Corey Heatherman. And in 2024, Minnesota finished inside the top 15 in yards allowed per play, which leads me to believe Miami will be somewhat improved on that front, seeing as the talent level at Miami is going to be much higher than that of Minnesota. But the real question obviously is going to be how much they improve in 2025, and we'll have to wait and see on that. But this was a unit that held Miami back from a potential playoff appearance last year. They were around 45th in yards allowed per play, 70th in points allowed per game, and only generated around 1.3 takeaways, which was good for 80th in the country last year. They need to be much improved if they want to get back to an ACC title caliber team and a potential playoff caliber team. And last for Miami's weaknesses, it's going to be the specialists. Punting was not a huge concern for Miami last year with Dylan Joyce as their punter, and that's why he ranked towards the bottom of the ACC in both average and net punt yards. But seeing as the offense is probably going to take a step back this year, he'll need to play much better if they want to win those close matchups that have plagued Mario Cristobal-led teams, especially in 2022 and 2023, but also a couple times last year. And this unit also has to replace Andres Borregales, who ended with a conference best 62 of 62 from extra points and 18 of 19 on field goals with a long of 56. And they're replacing him with Texas kicker Bert Auburn, who had a big drop off from 2023 to 2024. Just 16 of 25 on the season, 6 of 12 on attempts from 40 to 49, and 0 for 2 on attempts over 50 yards. And that's not at all what you want to see from a guy who went 9 of 12 from 40 to 49 and 2 for 4 from 50 just 1 year prior. And with that, let's take a look at Miami's grades this year, starting with the offense, which I am giving a 93 flat. Should be one of the best offenses in the sport once again this year. But the question will be, can they be as good as they were last year? Probably not. That offense was ridiculous last year, easily the best in the country. But I don't think they necessarily need to be in order to be an ACC championship or playoff appearing team. And that could be true so long as the defense makes an improvement, and I am giving that unit an 89.5, a B+. I think they will be improved overall from where they were a year ago. By how much, I can't really say, but I really like their edge rushing tandem in Mesidor and Ruben Bain. I think they made a huge improvement in the secondary through the portal, which was a huge area of concern last year. And overall, I like the talent they bring in on that side of the ball, but that brings us to our special teams, which I am giving an 85 flat. Pretty low, but with Auburn being the best specialist of that unit, mixed with Miami's average punt and kick coverage from a year ago, I'd say it's warranted. And as for coaching, we are giving Cristobal and company an 88.5. I feel like this is as good as it gets for this staff. Seeing where they've been and seeing where they are now, they haven't quite gotten over the hump and really transcended into that upper echelon of teams, but they have made strides at Miami and gotten them to that level, and now it's just a matter of crossing the finish line. And last, for the strength of schedule, I'm giving Miami a 94 flat. Like I said, the ACC is going to have easier schedules, but this one is still pretty tough. And with 8 of those games being at home, it's going to keep it from being an elite strength of schedule, but in my opinion, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And that's going to round Miami out to a 90 flat, which is appropriate for this team in my opinion. They look really good on paper, but in practice, we will have to see if they can overcome a few of those obstacles in all 3 phases of the game. And with that, let's take a look at my predictions for this Miami team this year. I think Miami's floor is going to be 7-5. I think if Beck is held back by injuries once again and the defense doesn't make a noticeable improvement from last year in year 1 under Heatherman, that we could see this team drop both non-con games to Florida and Notre Dame, with the other 3 of course coming in conference, and potentially potentially 2 out of the 3 of those conference losses could be in the 2 final games this year. But I think this team's ceiling is 10-2. I think they could take one half of those 2 non-conference matchups in this scenario, but I think there's at least one guaranteed loss between those 2 teams. And then I think the second loss comes to one of those run-heavy offenses like Louisville, SMU, or Pitt, which brings me to my final prediction for the Miami Hurricanes in 2025, and that's going to be 9-3. I still do think they split those 2 home games from Notre Dame or Florida, but I think that interior D-line is going to have some trouble in conference play, especially against those premier rush offenses in the ACC. And on top of that, Cristobal's Miami has notoriously been bad at closing out the year. They tend to crumble late. I think the third loss comes to either Virginia Tech or Pitt in those last 2 games, with a potential ACC title berth on the line, just like we saw last year. Like I said, those run offenses are going to have a field day with that interior defensive line. I think Pitt would be my choice of the 2. Similar to Syracuse last year, I think Desmond Reed is going to really affect that defense, unless, of course, they take that next step and become a top 30, top 25 defense, in which case the ceiling is very, very likely in 2025. But let me know what you think of this Hurricanes team in the comments below. And with that, thank you for watching. As always, be sure to like and subscribe if you did enjoy it, and we will see you in the next one.